Only a few months ago, Europe's rearmament push was dominating the headlines, with the news abuzz with stories about NATO defence spending uplifts, national militarisation drives, and hundreds of billions of euros of new debt issued by national governments and the EU via its Rearm Europe programme. However, in recent weeks, media reports have suggested that Europe's rearmament isn't going totally to plan. Some pan-European defence projects, such as France and Germany's joint fighter jet project and the EU's drone defence initiative, are stalling due to contractor tensions and disagreements over procurement, while certain national programmes, such as Germany's proposed military service scheme, are also facing challenges due to political and public opposition. So in this video, we'll discuss why Europe's rearmament drive appears to be stalling, and how the EU is trying to get it back on track. If you're interested in the political alliances and groupings which shape our world, then you might enjoy our poster, Every Alliance Explained. It shows, in slightly confusing detail, all of the world's major alliances and how different countries link together. Check out the poster by clicking the link in the description. So let's get straight into it. As we see it, there are three main things hampering Europe's rearmament at the moment. First, intra-European squabbling, second, strained public finances, and third, challenges around expanding national armies. Let's start with the first and perhaps biggest problem facing Europe's rearmament, namely that European countries are still, despite the apparent urgency of the moment, struggling to cooperate on defence projects. The EU appeared to remind member states of this only last week, publishing an updated communication on its 2025 White Paper for European defence, following the recent escalations in Russia's hybrid attacks on EU member states, which saw incursions of Russian drones and warplanes into European NATO airspace in September and October. In this document, which has a noticeably urgent tone, the EU states somewhat bluntly that, to be 2030 ready, Europe needs to move now. The new paper outlines plans for 4 new intra-EU flagship projects: the European Drone Defence Initiative and Eastern Flank Watch, the European Air Shield, and the European Space Shield, all to be launched in 2026 and completed by 2028 at the latest. The European Commission intends to act as a facilitator for these projects, providing a quote one-stop shop service to give advice to member states on linking national actions to EU funding. However, within days of the Commission announcing these new initiatives, intra-EU divisions had arisen. For instance, while the drone wall is supported by the Baltic states, Poland, Romania, Bulgaria, Finland and Denmark, France and Germany are reportedly sceptical, because they want to handle big procurement initiatives themselves, rather than have the Commission act as a coordinator. To try and address this, the EU is pushing for 40% of all defence procurement to be joint procurement by the end of 2027, with quote lead and co-lead nations appointed on implementation plans by early 2026. But whether they can overcome opposition from individual member states remains to be seen. Similarly, recent media reports have suggested that one older European multinational project, the multi-billion euro Future Combat Air System, or FCAS, French and German-led project to build a next-generation fighter jet, which dates back to 2017, is now on the brink of collapse, due to tensions between the two lead aerospace contractors, France's Dassault and Germany's Airbus. As one senior Airbus executive told journalists after the Paris Air Show in June, "We are competitors that have to marry." According to The Economist, some German officials think the French see FCAS as more of an industrial trophy than a strategic necessity, while some in France suspect that the Germans just want to steal their expertise. But whatever the reason for this fallout, suggestions that both sides are prepared to walk away from one of the EU's long-standing joint defence projects is a bad sign for both French-German relations and European defence autonomy. There are also recurring disagreements over whether pan-European defence projects should be organised at the EU level, or expanded to include other nearby NATO allies like the UK and even Turkey. France, for instance, has apparently blocked the UK from the EU's new defence fund, despite the tentative rapprochement between the UK and the EU earlier this year. The second reason that Europe's rearmament is stalling is strained public finances. This apparent unwillingness to coordinate defence projects at the European level risks putting even more strain on the public finances of European countries, many of which are already dealing with tight budgets and stagnant growth, and which are now having to spend lots more on defence, with all European NATO members, other than Spain, committing in June to NATO's new spending target of 5% of GDP. However, as we've explained in previous videos, European militaries could actually get far better value for money if they coordinated more of their defence spending. Because national European armies tend to source weapons from their own domestic suppliers, European defence manufacturers aren't used to producing equipment at scale, which means the systems they do produce are more expensive. As this graphic from the Bruegel think tank comparing the cost of various howitzers show, higher production generally corresponds to lower cost per unit, which is why American, Russian and Ukrainian-made systems are cheaper than their European equivalents. Similarly, the latest variant of Germany's Leopard tank comes in at €29 million, roughly 7 times what it costs Russia to produce a T-90 tank, and 12 times what it costs China to produce a Type 99A. The consequent fragmentation of Europe's defence industry has also led to unnecessary duplications of equipment. According to a 2018 analysis, European NATO members collectively had 6 times as many weapon systems as the US. Simplifying procurement and standardising equipment across the EU would also improve cooperation between European armies, which would likely be needed in the event of a war on the continent. It's also given way to short-term thinking on the part of European arms manufacturers, who tend to only invest when their home country is increasing defence spending. As such, the EU's updated Defence White Paper recommends that member states leverage their joint buying power through multi-annual programmes to, quote, send the right long-term signals to help firms expand production. However, it'll probably be difficult to get European weapons manufacturers on board with this, as they've historically benefited from supplying their own domestic armies with little competition, and may initially see lower profits from joint procurement than if they kept supplying their own national armies. Anyway, the third and final obstacle blocking Europe's rearmament is that most European militaries have been getting progressively smaller, at least in terms of manpower, since the 1990s, and many European governments are now struggling to reverse that trend. This month, for instance, Germany's coalition fell out over adding a lottery provision to its draft military service bill, over concerns that the proposed voluntary scheme won't attract enough new recruits. Similarly, Poland's ambitious militarisation plans have been hampered by personnel shortages, despite huge increases in defence spending. Sweden, which has remilitarised since joining NATO in 2024, is also considering raising the conscription age for former military officers from 47 to 70. These issues speak partly to a broader societal hurdle, that currently many European populations seem either unprepared or unwilling to participate in the continent's rearmament effort. Before you go, we've just announced our new coffee table book, Assembly Required, a 300-page book which highlights 27 of the world's most beautiful parliament buildings, from the classics like Westminster, the Capitol, or the Hungarian Parliament, to ones that you might not expect, like Georgia, Bhutan, or Bangladesh. For each, we don't only show you beautiful photos of these actually incredible buildings, we also tell you the stories of the buildings, both through passages written by our team, as well as through detailed custom-designed floor plans and diagrams. We really did spend a long time on this too. We spent ages digging into the stories of parliament buildings all around the world, before narrowing it down to the most interesting and beautiful buildings, writing tens of thousands of words to tell you their stories. We've also made both desk and wall calendars based on Assembly Required too, allowing you to experience these beautiful buildings year-round. Both are also double-sided, providing tons of bonus images for you to enjoy. If you're interested, click the link in the description to find out more. There's a whole load of bundles available if you want a good deal. Plus, if you do want a copy, you can get 10% off by using the code ASSEMBLY. That code only lasts for this week, so now's your chance. So if you are interested, then your support will help us to continue investing in our journalism and providing free content for years to come. So thank you, as always.